I call this August 17th meeting of the Paducah Planning and Zoning Commission to order, and I ask that you please stand with us as we say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Mr. Irwin, would you call the roll, please?
Yes, ma'am. Benberry, Bradford, Morrison,
Here.
Schramke,
Here.
Shadle,
Here.
Wade,
Here.
Chair Casillas.
Here. Mr. Morrison, you have the minutes motion.
Yes, ma'am. I move that the reading of the minutes for August 3rd, 2015 be waived and that the minutes of said meeting as prepared by the secretary be approved as written.
Second.
Second by Schramke. Are there any corrections? Call the roll, please.
Morrison,
Aye.
Schramke,
Aye.
Shadle,
Aye.
Wade,
Aye.
Chair Casillas.
Aye. Ms. Schramke, you have the first item of business, which is the zoning text amendment on the downtown business town lift zone.
I do, thank you. I move that a resolution entitled, "A Resolution Constituting the Final Report of the Paducah Planning Commission on the Proposed Text Amendment of the Paducah Zoning Ordinance by amending Section 126-108 Downtown Business Town Lift Zone," be adopted.
Second.
Second by Wade. Mr. Irvin, you want to give us a little bit of background, please, on the text amendment?
Certainly. There's two proposed changes to the B2T zone. That's roughly an area from 7th Street to the river on both sides of Broadway to the alley. So it's the actual core buildings downtown. The first one is, although always allowed, three uses have never really been principally permitted uses in the B2T town lift zone. And those are residential dwelling units, retail, bakery, pub, restaurant, bakery, and pubs, and also just general retail uses. Obviously, we know those have always been there. For some reason, historically, they've never actually been in the principally permitted use list. Since we're making those changes, staff is recommending that we also make one other change, and that is, as we start to move forward with the redevelopment of properties downtown, staff thinks it's best that we limit what can happen on the first floor downtown. All types of restaurants, retail uses, and those other uses allowed in the principal permitted use list would be allowed on the first floor, but not residential except for the back 1/3 of the property. The reasoning behind that, as far as being pedestrian friendly for tourism, retail-related industry downtown, we think it's best that we limit the amount of residential on the first floor downtown. If you'll remember when Jeff Speck was in last year, he talked about how things need to be interesting. Storefronts need to be located in your downtown. That's the draw. So that's really the reasoning behind that requested text change.
Do we have any residences now that have living space on the first floor? I mean, any downtown businesses or buildings? Because I'm wondering, does this then change if they're already existing?
Oh, if they're existing, I'm trying to think. I can't think of one offhand, but if they're already existing, they would be just called existing non-conforming. They'd be able to do it forever, and they would also be able to sell their building in the future and continue doing what they're doing.
Okay.
So that wouldn't affect any existing businesses at all. It'd be just new businesses or new development.
That Second Street there, where that apartment is for Montgomery lives,
Yeah, those are condominiums.
that's residential.
Yeah,
on the first floor. So,
Because there are condominiums on the first floor.
Yeah, on 2nd Street, that's correct. This would be for new development, though.
Are there any comments? Call the roll, please.
Schramke,
Aye.
Shadle,
Aye.
Wade,
Aye.
Morrison,
Aye.
Chair Casillas.
Aye. Mr. Wade, you have the zoning text amendment for the sign regulations, please.
Yes, I move that a resolution entitled, "A Resolution Constituting the Final Report of the Paducah Planning Commission on the proposed text amendment of the Paducah zoning ordinance by amending section 126-76 sign regulations be adopted.
Second.
Second by Morrison.
2676.
Yes. Probably, let me find out how many years ago that was.
That's right. Yeah.
5 or 6 years ago, the City of Paducah amended text regulations. At that time, sandwich board signs were not allowed in the downtown area. We amended the text regulations to allow them in the B2T zone. What this proposal does is to allow that to go a little bit further. There are historic structures located throughout the city, some along Broadway, and some downtown that are historically built right up to the right-of-way. This would allow those business owners that have buildings right up to the right-of-way to have sandwich board signs, but also in the H1 zone. This amendment also, for instance, would allow at the Texaco, the city-owned building, if there was a function going on at one of the artist galleries, it would allow a sign to be put there saying, at this address on this night, there's an opening reception or something like that. So it allows in the H1 zone where it's not allowed now for businesses, but also allows it in those historic structures that are built on the right-of-way in other parts of the town.
These would not be permanent structures. These are moved in and moved out.
Yeah, they have to follow the existing sandwich board sign regulations. There's a minimum width that the sidewalk has to be, which kind of pushes it towards those major corridors. They also can only be in the first 36 inches of the sidewalk, and the sidewalk has to be a minimum of 8 feet for those sandwich board signs to go in there. So on Broadway and some of those places.
Any comments?
I like that you don't have balloons and all the peripheral items on those signs. It kind of add to that. So you had a little addendum there or something.
Yeah, well, those regulations have been in place for a while, the existing sandwich board sign regulations.
Violated a few times.
Yeah.
Yes, I've seen them violated a few times myself. Any other comments? Ready for the vote? Call the roll, please.
Wade,
Aye.
Morrison,
Aye.
Schramke,
Aye.
Shadle,
Aye.
Chair Casilius.
Aye. Mr. Shadle, you have the Lourdes Hospital campus sign request.
Yes, I do. I move that this commission receive and file the application of Lourdes Hospital pardon me, for the approval of a campus sign to be located at 1530 Lone Oak Road pursuant to Section 126-76B of the Paducah Paducah zoning ordinance. I further move that this commission find that the sign will not have a negative impact on vehicular traffic or adjacent neighbors, and that the Planning Commission has approval authority for the campus sign to be located at 1530 Lone Oak Road. I further move the application be approved.
Second.
Second by Schramke.
Yes, the hospital is located in the hospital medical zone. The purpose of the hospital medical zone is to actually add flexibility to the existing hospitals because of all the directional signage they have on site, because it's more of like a campus. But when signs are proposed, they do have to come before the Planning Commission for approval. The proposed electronic sign is actually across the street from a commercial zone where electronic signs are already allowed. So that's the reason it's actually coming to the Planning Commission, because it's in the hospital medical zone. Is not a principally permitted use.
Will this help to eliminate some of the banner signs that they put out in the yard at different times?
Please do.
Absolutely. Now they'll really be able to change their message.
Please come up, give us your name and tell us about it.
Tom Troutman, Troutman Sign Graphics. Absolutely, to answer your question, eliminate the garbage on either side. They'll be able to give their messages in a unobtrusive but readable position. And the sign that's going up is actually smaller than the entrance sign is there, so we're not creating any. And it's going to use the same base, so all you're going to do is one will pull up and the next one will sit down in the same place.
I do like the stone around the edge. I think that's really...
That may change because that was proposed before we found out we could use the same concrete base.
Ah, okay.
But you'll still have the stone. It may not be exactly like that. That was my first rendering, and we're into the second, third, and fourth.
How that is.
But whatever I put up there, I promise it'll be an attractive sign.
Are there any
Anybody else?
comments? Thank you. Questions, comments? Ready for the vote? Call the roll, please.
Yes, ma'am. Shadle,
Aye.
Wade,
Aye.
Morrison,
Aye.
Shramky,
Aye.
Chair Casillas.
Aye. Mr. Morrison, you have the City of Paducah bylaw change.
Yes, ma'am. I move that this commission adopt the changes as shown in the Paducah Planning Commission bylaws. Said changes will be voted on and will take effect at the next regular or called meeting pursuant to Article 9 of the current bylaws.
I guess second by Mr. Shadle. One of the things that we do need to point out in changing our bylaws, part of the reason why we are, is because we're trying to get all of the meetings in the city at the same time.
That's correct.
Currently, the Planning and Zoning Commission meets at 6 o'clock, and we're going to move our meetings back to 5:30 so that we have the same time period as the City Commission and
Historical and Architecture Review Commission at this point also. And I'm not sure if the discussions happened with Board of Adjustment yet. Dan hasn't.
not yet. I think it's a good move on the city's
The
part.
Hart meeting always met at 5:30, so we're just.
They're fine,
Yeah.
which is fine. I don't think 5:30 creates a hardship for anyone on the commission, does it? Hope not.
And once this is approved, a nice, clean, new bylaws.
I know, well, and it also
After
takes
all of
care of some other minor things that needed to be changed. But that's one of the primary goals of the changes, is to set the meeting time for 5:30.
Yes, ma'am. And I guess the next meeting will still be at 6 o'clock, and then we'll vote on it.
Well, the next meeting would be Labor Day, so we won't be meeting that day. But then the meeting after that would be September the 21st.
Okay.
And
So,
this says we're meeting at 5:30. At that meeting, which will be the first one to be held at 5:30, a motion will be provided.
we discussed that at the last meeting.
I don't think it can be at 5:30. I think it still has to be at 6.
And then-
And because then we will approve it at that meeting.
I agree.
So it will be at 6. And then subsequent meetings from here on out will stay at 5.
So okay. So we're not going to approve our bylaws change tonight.
Ask Donna to
Well, I
remind.
think
Well,
we're
we'll
gonna-
do first reading tonight.
Yeah, that,
So we have to have 2 readings for the bylaws change. Well, then you're right. It'll have to be 6 o'clock at that
Would you
time.
ask Donna when she calls us to see if we're attending that meeting in September to remind us that it's at 6?
Yes.
And then following?
Yes, sir.
The next one to remind us it's at 5:30?
Yeah,
Yes.
we were all set to meet at 5:30. We had a lengthy discussion about this at the last meeting when you weren't here.
Some of us are not here.
People were
so,
confused.
Donna will let us know.
yeah. We're gonna follow
Don will
Donna.
be in charge. There we are.
But what you're saying makes perfect sense.
For a change.
Like nobody else does. Thank you.
Oh, I didn't.
Thank you, Bob. Okay, so I guess what we're really doing is just a first reading tonight, and we'll then approve it at our meeting on the 21st, I believe is when that is. Yes, it is, 5:30.
Yes, ma'am.
Now, under discussion, there was some, I've had some input, I don't know about anybody else on the commission, about the building at 5th and Broadway, the demolition of the building at 5th and Broadway. And Mr. Irvin was very good about saying that that people are questioning whether there's going to be a parking lot there, but they have already drawn up a plan, and he was going to share some of that information with us tonight.
Yeah,
Do we need to vote on this?
It's a
Bylaw change?
first reading,
We don't vote? Okay.
Just introduce.
not on a first reading.
Just for-
You just
That's all I
introduced
needed?
it.
Okay.
Okay.
First of all, the City of Paducah is actually in a very unfortunate situation that we're actually having to proceed in this manner. So I wanted to say that first of all. But we have EAI, which is demolition contractor, has been procured their services. They actually are on site today, and for the next 90 days will be starting the demolition process. It's almost going to be a hand demolition just because of the structural issues that are with that building at this point. With that being said, I believe on the website already under request for proposals, anybody can go on there and see a redevelopment plan that's already been put on that site. And the long-term goal for that lot is for to work with the developer, a public-private partnership, utilizing our upper story residential incentive program that we have in place. What that incentive program is, and it's an existing ordinance that's already been passed, is that as a developer comes in, if they want to build back, that the city would have a $15,000 per residential unit on the second and third floors that they would put in towards the redevelopment of that site. And then, of course, we would want to have some type of retail on the first floor. So we will be actively pursuing a partnership with the developer to come back and redevelop on that site. That's more of a long-term goal. Short-term goal is that the old Walgreens floor there, that's an old terrazzo floor. So we are leaving the existing floor in place. Part of the reason for that is the structural stability of the adjacent structure. But when we get done, that'll all be cleaned off and cleared, and we'd like to come back with a pop-up park is what we refer to it. And it's more of a temporary park that may be there for several years, but it's larger trees and planters. It's maybe some benches. It's beautifying an existing vacant space in the meantime until we can have that property redeveloped. But certainly a parking lot on a vacant lot on Broadway is the opposite of what anybody would want to do. I was speaking earlier about wanting to keep your downtown interesting. People don't want vacant spaces. They want to see things and things that are interesting downtown as they walk through a downtown area. So we would never let that loose for a parking lot. Plus, it's too narrow for a parking lot.
Is that adjacent building, how are they going to, when they tear this down, hopefully they don't go in and plaster it like you see some of these places where they're plastered over?
The demolition contractor is in the exploratory phase of the project right now, meaning they're really getting in and taking a look at how those two buildings are attached. We'll find a lot more of that out as we go, but I don't see that happening. The first floor of the 432 Broadway actually is a concrete wall. The upper stories are all brick. One of the reasons that you see that, Dan, also is because a lot of those were meant to be interior walls, and they're very porous. So it's, yeah.
I didn't know if they were planning on adding any kind of stabilizing facade to keep, if in fact that was porous brick, because many times, as you said, they're interior walls. I didn't know.
We will. Don't have any definitive answers
Sure.
about how that structure is going to have to be stabilized, because as the demolition contractors pursue it further, possibility of structural engineers coming in also and taking a look at it to find out if there's anything else needed to be done or not.
And how far back does that building go? Does it go all the way to the alley, or isn't there a?
No, there is an adjacent structure right behind it that's an existing residence.
Will it remain?
Yes, it will.
Steve, is that one of the oldest structures? Was that perhaps the first one or the last one in that block?
I don't know the answer to that.
It's the old Goodman building, though.
Yeah.
Hal Sullivan's grandfather.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
a couple buildings down.
No, that was on the corner of the Goodman building, wasn't it? George Goodman. I sold newspapers out of that building in 58 and
He
59.
was telling us about that last time.
I was the paper boy for that area, standing on the corner freezing.
If you're also asked about, what's the main reason that the city is moving forward with the demolition of the structure, we brought a firm in from Louisville called Sullivan Cosart, which has done a lot of rehabilitation work within the historic districts of Louisville. And the estimates that were coming back to us for just the stabilization structure, I'm not talking about the rehab, were $1.9 to $2 million. A lot of that was because of how they had to take the basically first 20 feet or so of the structure off because it's twisting off. And when they did that amount of demolition to the front of it to put it back, it brought into the picture seismic requirements and wind load requirements on the remaining structure. So just to bring the structure back to a point where you could start to rehabilitate it, you're close to $2 million. So,
And Steve, is this part of the plan? Like, if we remove a building in this area, that we're going to put in a park?
No.
Always the case, or is it just?
No. Ultimately, the plan that's in place is to find a developer that would reinvest in that property and bring the streetscape back. The downtown core, or the integrity of the downtown core, those structures are having storefronts are very important to that.
I get that, but was that part of the plan to, in the interim, to put in a park?
Yes, that's a pop-up park. It's a temporary thing until you can find permanent reinvestment in the property.
But that's been a part of our thinking all along.
Yeah.
I think it's as much as we all wish the building could stay, it's at least a transitional plan that will, A, stabilize the adjacent building, and B, try to provide something that is visually appealing until a developer can be found.
Another point that I'd like to make is obviously this building got in a condition that it should never have gotten in.
It happened over a long period of time.
Yes, it did.
happened overnight.
Within the last year, the City Commission has passed a number of ordinances to try to keep those types of things from happening in the future. One is the roof stabilization program. The last 2 years, we've done 8 roofs downtown. We actually had a application deadline today for roofs that we'll be doing this year. So the City of Paducah, depending on the number of applications, can help offset the cost of roof stabilization up to 50%. The whole reason for that is the stabilization of the structure for years and years and years to come. Beyond that, we have the upper story residential program that's going to help, hopefully, if we can find someone to start to renovate the second, third floors. It brings more people downtown, but that also encourages reinvestment in the first floor retail. If that property needed a roof, it also encouraged roof replacement or facade improvements because of that grant. So we're trying to do things to spur reinvestment in those structures downtown.
It's wonderful, it really is. I applaud the city for the steps that you've taken to try to redevelop downtown.
Yeah.
It's wonderful.
And I know you have a lot of familiarity with Main Street programs, so.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Appreciate the update.
Yes.
Are there any other comments? Anything, any other business? If there's no more other business to come before the commission, we stand adjourned.